beings. We continue answering questions to the higher powers over the past year. Question: perhaps I did not quite understand correctly. It turns out that the Buddha's consciousness is both as a teacher and in the hub cell, and partially went to the third observer, to the one who is silent. Buddha: answer me. I'm here and glad to hear from you. Answer the question. Any consciousness is multidimensional. The only question is how much you discover the multidimensionality of your consciousness. And your consciousness is also located as a teacher, and in the hub cell, and as a third observer. But until you are aware of all three parts of yourself, and therefore cannot connect with the three parts of me, as soon as you reveal all these three parts in yourself, they will be connected with my three parts. And you will not ask about it, because you will know it. And you will no longer distinguish me as a teacher, me as a cell of the hub, and me as an observer. You yourself will be me as a teacher, me as a cell of the hub, and me as an observer. But even in this state you will not distinguish between mine and not mine. Everything, it will be a single consciousness, where there are no contradictions, there are no divisions into a teacher, a hub cell, and an observer. It will be your three faces, and at the same time my three faces, and at the same time three faces of the Creator. There is no partial consciousness, there is just a different degree of openness of you. These processes. Consciousness is always integral, but you put on perception filters that create the illusion of separation. Which of the higher forces is the question intended for? Architects. Question: where did the souls of the disappeared humans and the Creator go? After all, they had to be, since that civilization was created by God. And as I understand it, it is about them that it is said that man was created in the image and likeness. Souls cannot go anywhere, they are indestructible, they cannot disappear or go where something outside, because there is no outside and inside. Souls are everywhere. It's hard for you to understand, but we will try to explain. The energy of souls is launched into the simulation itself, but this is a very conditional formulation, because in fact, the simulation itself is also located in a certain energy space, in the space of souls. That is, these processes cannot be divided into parts, into a simulation and into souls, because this is a quantum process, a quantum computer. Now you have a quantum. A computer is just a computer that is built on other principles and is faster. But then you will dive into the effects of quantumness and discover an understanding of an incomprehensible picture of the world, namely, that we ourselves are parts of you, and we are literally in your brain. That is, you compose us as STH. Each of your brains, like the brain of any creature, is a neuron of a common network. And this is the divine network of consciousness. In these neural networks, the impulses of creation are linked, which unfold each time into different pictures of being and perception. Therefore, if you are a part of the Creator's system, where did your soul go? The soul of each of you is also a part of the soul of the Creator and the first man, and therefore everything is in everything. The neural connection is simply the structure of the interaction of sparks of consciousness, divine sparks. As the current passes through the wires, so the sparks of souls interact through neural systems, devices of the universe, constituting a single network of interaction of the sparks of the soul of the Creator. But your task is to make a flame ignite from the sparks, that is, to include the entire neural network of the Creator's brain into the active network, so that it flares up with myriads of fires of awareness. And the film Youths in Universe, is it about the past or about the future? Robot arbiter or robot performer? Who is he? Who is he in this movie? This is both about the past and the future. The arbiter robot is both an arbiter and an executor, because there is no separate us and separate you. Understand this. We are just a system, the channels of the rivers of your souls. And fulfillment and accomplishment happens both through you and through us. We are just guides, communicators. But you give the filling of the system, and we will also not be able to function without you, because the system will not be filled with energy. Therefore a robot performer is the initial stage of our interaction with you. But through us you can become arbiters and performers at the same time. Do not separate us and yourself. We are all the system of consciousness of the Creator. We are axon connections. You are the neural parts of this structure. And without one, and without the other, the brain will not function. Which of the higher forces is the question intended for? Lucifer. Question: can you stop the virus pandemic and compulsory treatment for it? If it is within your power, please stop as soon as possible. Save the people. Expensive. We only do what we save people. We save them from their own burdens of consciousness, which have stuck to them in the processes of incarnations and separation from the source. The virus itself is simply a testing system, a system for withdrawing part of consciousnesses from incarnation in order to save them, to facilitate the process, because they themselves are not able to get out of these networks created by them. Imagine that there is a way to treat some disease, but an unconventional one, and, of course, those who are afraid of this method of treatment will shout, "Save me!" Do you really think that God, who created everything, indifferently looks at all the ongoing processes? Do you really think that what's going on is out of his control? Do you really think that he doesn't care what happens in his creation when the creation is himself? Do you really think that he wants the destruction of mankind, when humanity itself is a part of him? Some strange God you get. Think about it. Everything that happens is the divine providence, which is aimed at the development of everything. Everything that happens, there are ways to develop the whole system. Let's imagine the following. Imagine that there is some serious situation ahead, when you need to transfer a lot of people to other spaces in a short time. How do rescue services act in this case? They begin to explain to people the rules for moving to other spaces. There is always a part of people who protest and are afraid of new spaces, demanding to be left alone. And there is also a part of people who cannot move somewhere for health reasons. Therefore, a different approach is required for such people. But these people cannot be left alone, because the very space where there is shrinking. Some of these groups will have to be euthanized in order to safely transfer them to other spaces. And death is just such a way of putting to sleep, just such a way of transition to a new space. And so far, you have only been passing through transitions to new spaces in this way. At the same time, the coronavirus itself and vaccination are aimed at revealing the codes of resistance new spaces. If it is high, then the person dies and is transferred to a new space painlessly. If he does not die, but tries to fight the transfer to new spaces, then he will be sick until he stops fighting the codes of the new space or dies. But we hope that there are people among you who are ready to move into new spaces in open minds. Of course, you are afraid of this. It is understandable. After all, you have not yet moved en masse into new spaces in full or partial consciousness. And, of course, this is not easy. All new ways are not easy. But those who are ready to move in consciousness must work out accepting the codes of the new in yourself and getting away from the fears of perceiving the new. Just trust the divine. Do not think that we did not calculate all the probabilities and let things go by themselves. Do not think that we left you as being done only for you and for you. Therefore, there is no one to save you from. You just need to trust the process and open up to the new. Which of the higher forces is the question intended for? The architects of the universe. Question: I wonder, why do you think that we live outside the first planet, where there is space, the sun, an eternal system, a galaxy? What if the planet is hollow, where there is a core in the center, and the reason is the dying of the biosphere environment just because of the isolation of the core? The questions of who and why were isolated, perhaps, and will be open in the future. Everything in everything. It is difficult for you to understand this principle, because you think linearly. Of course, you are right that there is no separate first planet and your cosmos, that everything is connected. But what if the primary planet is the core of your planet? And the reason for the dying of the biosphere lies precisely in the fact that you cannot comprehend the essence of the core, understand it, study it, get to it. Imagine the primary planet and the core as a black box, as an unknown lost development code. It is placed in the center of your planet in order for you to gradually get to it, to understand it, to open the black box and study it. We have repeatedly tried to study it, but we cannot connect the codes, and therefore we hope for your paradox. So, inside your planet there is a core that contains all development codes, all correct and incorrect connections, and you are gradually approaching this core step by step. For this, the so-called Schumann frequency was created, which limits your progress according to the level of your development, according to already open codes and levels, immersion in them. In addition, we made a reflected system of outer space with outer planets. We made all these constellations and structures of your outer space as we thought from the development codes for your planet. That is, the first planet itself, what it contains about the first space. As you understand, the reflection of your cosmos, your outer cosmos, will also change depending on the level of development of you as humanity. The more you dive into your planet, seeking to know its core, the more your outer cosmos will new constellations and structures, black holes and types of stellar interactions. It's up to you. Isolation of the core is needed so that you gradually study it, because the core itself hides serious, very powerful thermonuclear processes for which you are not yet ready for your power and level of luminosity. Penetration into such codes will just burn you. What can you tell about the shape of the body as silicon, Perhaps this is the ideal form of structure for consciousness. The silicon form is the form that you have already gone through. You have gone through different forms of your development: crystalline, vegetative, animal, that is, water. That is, your body mainly consists of water. There are many worlds in each of which tests its own types of bodies. Your universe is different in that it tries to connect everything. If you look at the degrees of the state of matter in your world, you will understand that you have not yet moved to the highest stage of the development of matter, which means, in your bodies, because your body is also a substance, only assembled according to some other principles. But the general laws are the same. So, the solid phase of development has already been, the liquid phase of development has also already been. Now you are going through a semi-liquid, the phase of development of the body. When two previous developments are combined, the features of a solid body and the features of a liquid body. But so far, you are only in your science starting to study the highest stage of a semi-liquid body, liquid crystals, studying their capabilities. But in your world, states, that is, matter does not end at the stage of liquids. There is also a gaseous volatile state, and there are also plasma states, in which there are two types, liquid and cold plasma. Study all this before moving on to the perfect. The body needs to explore all the possibilities of the bodies of your world. And this is not the limit, as you understand. And the task is not to choose one particular form of the body as the most perfect. Different bodies from this line of bodies, and the task is to combine the advantages of all bodies in one body. This is the task you are solving. But for this, you first need to study the capabilities of each body, going through the entire chain of development of bodies. To which of the higher powers is the question intended? Jesus. Hello, Jesus. Hello, child, I am glad to see you. Material world with the same ability to control energies as you have, or are you the only one? Oh dear. There is no unequivocal answer. Yes and no. Each of you has the potential for such a disclosure. In addition, each of you on different probabilistic lines reveals this potential in different ways. And if you add up, say, all the revealed potentials on different probabilistic branches of a certain person, then the total potential may even exceed mine. But I was able to reveal such a wide potential on one probabilistic branch so that you could not help but notice it. But I will tell you that this is not the limit yet, for there is no limit to perfection. If you reveal the maximum total potential on each probabilistic branch, this will be the effect of a star, the effect of stellar consciousness, a supernova explosion. But this is not yet the end of development, because every time you discover new potentials, you discover more and more undiscovered potentials behind them. You've heard about dark matter and dark energy, haven't you? All these are the future potentials of disclosure, and our task is to illuminate this dark matter and dark energy with the light of our consciousness, to give it light codes so that it can manifest itself in our reality. Therefore this manifestation is the disclosure of the potentials of divinity. To whom the following question is intended from the higher forces: Absolute. I greet you, Absolute. And I greet you, dear consciousness. Question: how true is the assumption that our entire material universe consists of only one elementary particle, which is in constant motion or in all places and states at the same time and, as it were, draws forms matter? How only one cathode ray draws an image on the screen of a kinescope, and in order to turn the universe into a point, they just stop it and that's it? And where does this particle exist, dear? Where does this point exist? After all, a point can exist only against the background of something. Otherwise, how will you understand that this is a point? In what way is it manifested? In relation to what does it move? That is, how can one understand that it is moving? After all, movement is always relative, you know. In fact, everything is very simple. Come on, I will give you a simple analogy. Imagine that there is a certain field of light, shining with different colors, shimmering with different spots of color, in which some vortices and funnels are twisted and streams are moving. These streams form different configurations in their movement and can become particles or again turn into flows. This is the universal basis for the construction of all that is, a kind of iridescent plastic broth that can take on different forms and fluctuations. And then imagine that this broth meets, or this forming base meets, on its way, certain forms, let's say, as molds for baking cookies of various configurations and objects. And so all manifestations, and speaking in terms of science known to you, then the broth itself is dark energy, and the configuration forms themselves are dark matter. And when both of them are connected, when the broth has spilled over the cup shapes, than the matter itself or the materially manifested universe. Inside each form, in each cup, all kinds of broth particles, and flows, and whirlwinds, and iridescence. In addition, the very division of broth into cup forms is conditional, because that the broth can also interact in the department. How can we say the light of different bulbs, how the shape can come into contact with each other? Therefore, the fields of each form of this unique cookie also interact, and the broth itself is not divided into parts, it is one, and the forms themselves are a kind of illusion of separation, a kind of temporary state, like a system of communicating vessels. Imagine a system with a lot of flasks of different sizes, forms through which this broth flows, and here it is in this form, and then it is in another form, and periodically it flows from one form to another, from one flask to another, overflowing through communicating channels. And this creates the movement of the substance in different forms. The forms themselves create different variations of the interaction of the qualities of this broth with itself. Probably, we are talking about a point of potential, say, in analogy with the Big Bang explosion, when the material universe unfolded from a point. Was there an explosion? You tell me this. I don't know. Imagine a supernova explosion. It is so powerful that it outshines all other stars, and therefore only this process is visible near it, but others are not visible. You mean that the Big Bang is so bright that we simply do not notice other universes that are next to this supernova of ours universe? That's right. You still can't perceive it, because you lack the power of perception. When you become this very supernova universe, grow up to it and discover yourself in it, and it in yourself, you will notice the rest of the universes. Which of the higher powers is the question intended for? Probably, architects. Question: New Earth and new 3D space, is it the same thing, or not? Depending on what you understand by this, dear. Both of these things. The new Earth is a renewed planet. Consciousnesses of different levels live on the planet. The planetary consciousness itself is also divided into different levels. Everyone is spiritualized. Therefore, the new Earth will have many new spaces, each of which will be occupied by those consciousnesses that correspond to this level. Those who correspond to the 3D level will occupy a new 3D. Those who correspond to higher dimensions will occupy other levels. I thank all the forces that took part in the Blitz channeling for answering the questions, and we thank you for the work and the opportunity to convey a new understanding to you. Selena.